A few weeks ago, I made a video on 5 NASCAR drivers who should come out of retirement. Well, today, we're doing the complete opposite and looking at drivers who drove for way too damn long. Now, why would I make this? Well, for perfect balance, as all things should be. But you may also be asking and want to know what constitutes a driver belonging in this video. Well, for this, a driver had to have been really good generally throughout their career. Even though they had a great career, though, the ending was embarrassing, and they really were just pedestrian. This will not include those, though, whose careers were ended due to injury, as I don't think that's a fair way to judge somebody, especially if they came back for a year or so, maybe 2. I don't think that's fair. Also, these will be from the era that NASCAR was televised for the most part, as these drivers' careers are easier to track over time. So if there was someone from the 50s or 60s that should have retired earlier, well, I don't know what really to say. It's hard to judge them only off of numbers. So without further ado, here we go. Starting off, we have Bobby Labonte. Bobby Labonte was one of NASCAR's premier drivers from the mid-90s through the early 2000s. While his career had humble beginnings, he was a NASCAR Busch Grand National champion in '91 after beating out Kenny Wallace by 74 points. His move to the Cup Series was inevitable, and in 1993 he went full-time. His career soared, though, after he reached Joe Gibbs Racing in the number 18 Interstate Battery Chevy. This happened in 1995. He started winning and winning and winning a lot. And once the new millennium rose, so too did Labonte, as he won the 2000 Winston Cup. So you may be thinking, how's he going to fall this bad? Well, he was good and all until 2004, and it just all crumbled. To put it like this, he led 497 laps in 2003. He led 233 laps total from 2004 to 2016. After leaving JGR after 2005, he landed at Petty Enterprises. Well, in the 43, he had a few respectable runs, but generally he was a mid-pack to back-of-the-pack driver. While having a full-time ride for the end of the 2000s and much of the early 2010s, he really never was the driver that he used to be. He was more of a shell of who he used to be. He definitely should have retired a lot earlier. Now next up is another JGR driver in Tony Stewart. Smoke's fall was one that just hurt to watch as a fan. He came onto the scene running really well in 1999, and really the train didn't stop rolling for over a decade. Winning dozens of races, as well as the 2002 and 2005 championships, his career at JGR alone was Hall of Fame worthy. But at SHR, the good times just kept rolling, as Stewart didn't miss a beat, and by 2011, he once again was Cup Series champion. This, for many, was the peak of Stewart's career. 2012 would be a solid year, but a step down from a championship, and 2013 seemed to only continue this drop. But due to injury, his season was left cut short. In 2014, he would come back, a shell of his former self, but the struggles kept going throughout the year and was only made worse after he was involved in the death of a driver named Kevin Ward Jr. It was clear that Tony's mental state as a man and a driver had been compromised at this point. While he did get a final victory in 2012, he had 4 miserable seasons from 2013 to 2016 and definitely overstayed his time. For our third pick, we're going to go back to the Labonte brothers, this time with Terry. Terry Labonte, in many respects, was the more accomplished Labonte. He was consistently competitive from his first season all the way back in 1979, and within 5 years, he was Cup Series champion. While not always having wins in his seasons, he was always really damn consistent. This was put on full display when he piloted the 5 car in the late 90s for Rick Hendrick. In 1996, his consistency led him to a second title, even though he only had 2 wins to his teammate Jeff Gordon's 10. Much like his brother Bobby, Terry began his fall-off after his championship. While still being consistent in the years that followed, by the turn of the millennium, he was winless and not even getting 10 top 10s a year. While he did have a bit of a last hurrah in 2003 with a win and a top 10 points finish, he only had 4 top 5s and 9 top 10s. Every year from 2000 to 2004, other than that, his points finishes were between 17th and 26th, with the latter being his last full-time season. It was clear that his career's best days were well behind them. Labonte's last gasp of relevancy came in 2006 at Sonoma, where he battled his former teammate Jeff Gordon for the victory. But much like the last 10 years of his career, Labonte was more of just a plug-and-play driver for woefully underdeveloped and underfunded teams. Labonte had a great career, but the last 10 years of being an also-ran really did sour his legacy in the view of younger generations. Had he retired in the early 2000s when his full-time racing was done, I think he would be viewed in a much better light by all fans overall as a very consistent driver in the sport's history. At the second to last choice for this video, we have Daryl Waltrip. Waltrip was another insanely consistent as well as dominant driver. From 1975 to 1989, he finished 8th or higher in the points every year. He also won in every one of those seasons. That is 15 straight seasons. Also, from 78 to 84, he led over 2,000 laps per season, including over 3,000 laps of the 9,455 he ran in 1982. 1982 was his second consecutive title as well, those being followed up by another championship in 1985. He did these seasons while driving for Junior Johnson, and while he didn't win any more titles, his high performance continued when he jumped over to Hendrick Motorsports to end off the 80s. In 1991, he made a decision, though, that spelled doom for his career. He drove for himself. While winning 5 times in his first 2 seasons, the team and his performance took a nosedive. By the mid-90s, he wasn't even a top 25 driver and was past the age of 50. His last small successes were a few good runs in his former rival's number 1 car, that of Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Like many in life, Daryl Waltrip just didn't know when to hang it up. The only one with a harder career fall from grace than Daryl Waltrip was royalty. King Richard Petty. Petty became a top-tier driver in 1960 at the age of 22. This began a streak of time that will never, ever be replicated in NASCAR. 18 straight winning seasons, a 1967 season that had 27 wins, hundreds of top 5s and top 10s, and 7 championships between 1964 and 1979. There was no one who could match the greatness of Richard Petty in the blue 43 car. But as NASCAR transitioned into the 80s, the rule book transitioned and began to tighten. Petty's stranglehold was pried away from his hands, and with this came Petty's demise. After getting his 200th win in 1984, Petty would go winless for the last 8 seasons of his career. By 1988, he was below 20th in points, with no coincidence here being that he was now in his 50s. The great career of the King withered away in front of fans' eyes. Had he called it quits earlier, he may have had an exit that was fit for a King. Luckily, we have the absolute dominance of the rest of his career to overshadow his quiet exit. Now with this, I want to pass this all on to you. What drivers do you remember who should have retired well before they did? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. And until next time, have a good one.